Hi guys, welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to be showing you how I use Procreate. So I have been using Procreate for the past, I want to say about 1.5 years. I've used it throughout college, I've used it throughout interning, I've used it for a buttload of reasons, but it is the main program that I use on my iPad. My iPad is the iPad Pro. This is actually the smaller version. I didn't want to spend a ton of money when I was starting out, so I got the smaller version of the iPad Pro. The bigger version is great too, but personally, I love the small one because I can take it traveling and it's not too big, not too small. It's like perfect sized for me. I have really small hands if you can't tell, and it works just fine. So if you're kind of swapping between the two, trying to figure out which one you want, the bigger one is great too. I just personally like the small one. Also, I have a screen protector on here, and it is the paper-like screen protector. So if you're looking for something that is a little bit inexpensive and also you want something that is matte on the screen, I'll list a few of them down below, the one that I have as well as a couple other ones that I know other people have used before. I also have the Apple Pencil 2nd generation, as this iPad personally can't use the old generation, so you have to have this guy right here because it locks onto the side and charges your Apple Pencil. Typically when I use my iPad, I go in with a 3000 by 3700 pixels canvas. This is just an optimal canvas size for any project. Typically when I'm done with a project, I will size it down to a 1080 by 1080 piece, just so it is the perfect pixel, because if you put this size canvas onto Instagram, Instagram will recognize it as a huge file, and when you go to post it on your stories, it'll be kind of pixelated and wonky. It's just not cute. Instagram can't handle a huge canvas size like that, but this is perfect if you want to use this image later for stickers or if you want to make prints out of it. It's just the perfect file size. I'm going to go in here and just kind of talk about the pencils that I use really quick. So this is the colors that I use for my canvas. These are pretty much just, if you go into the color wheel here, it's like the regular red but very, very desaturated. So same with the orange, you can go into orange here and it's just a super saturated version of the orange here. If you guys are looking for these, really the best way to do it is to just go into value and kind of work with the saturations just to figure out what you want out of it. It's really your own thing, and I really believe that the color palette is what makes the artist style look good and what their specific style is. So when I use my colors, I usually desaturate the color. If I feel like it's too dull or if I feel like it's not good enough, I will increase the contrast and make sure it works for my piece. You can also go in here afterwards and adjust the hue and saturation when you're done with your piece. So say an image is just a little bit too dull for you, you can always go in and change that later, and that's something that I will get into in this video as well. So brushes, let's go into brushes. So I have a gallery here of different kinds of brushes that I've purchased, brushes that I have kind of tweaked a little bit that are in Procreate already, and things that I've changed to make it a little bit more interesting. I keep mine under a section called portraits because I use these not only for my pieces, but if I'm making a portrait of a person, these are also the brushes that I would use. But I honestly should probably change the name of it, because I don't really make as many portraits as I used to, but it's something that I just named it when I originally started using it. I also have a favorite section in here that has a couple more, but these are really just old brushes that I don't really use anymore, so I should probably honestly get rid of it. But let's get into the types of brushes that I have, starting from the top. So this is the Nerinder pencil. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. I'm not exactly sure, but we are just gonna go with that. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use red so you guys can see it on the canvas. So this pencil is kind of like a normal pencil. Like it doesn't have like a certain flow to it. It's pretty much just like your own handwriting. But if you look really closely, you can see a little bit of grain. So this pencil is really good if you want to add, like, say you have like a shirt or something. Here, let's just make a really random shirt. Ugly, I know. But if you want to add like texture to a piece, you can just kind of add little bits and pieces. Like say the shirt is fuzzy and you want to make the shirt look fuzzy, you can do that. and it looks cute. Obviously not like that, because that's not cute. That's not obviously a worked on piece, but you understand what I mean. So I use that for fine detailing, texturizing, clothing, or I use it to just add little bits here and there. It's a nice pencil just for a little added flair. I don't necessarily use it for my sketching or anything like that. Bamboo chalk is also another really good texturizing pencil. I usually use it at like the fullest capacity, and I'll put an image layer onto a clipping mask, and I'll just go over the piece like this because it adds this grain to it. And then I'll go into here and I'll just make it a multiplied layer. So you'll see it when I go through the actual process, but that's usually what I do with this specific pencil. Another pencil that I really like using is the soft brush. I typically use this for shading or for using it as an eraser if I have something really small that I just want to get rid of. It's a really good brush to use for that. Now, this brush right here, the Tara, I'm not exactly sure, I don't want to butcher the name, so I'm going to say both. The Oval Sketch 2 brush. I love this brush, not only for sketching, but for outlining pieces that I want to have texture with, but to have a smooth texture with it. So when I'm sketching something out, this is the perfect brush because you can see it has a little bit of texture. Unlike the chalk brush, it doesn't really move weirdly. You'll know what I mean when I show you that. But it has much of a smoother finish to it, so I can use this when I'm working on pieces and I want to outline them, which I will get into when I work on the actual piece. This is perfect for that. Or if I just want a little bit of texture, not too much texture, instead of using the chalk pencil, this is what I use. This is a brush that you have to buy. It's super, super cheap though. I think it's like $2.99 or something like that, maybe $5.99 at the most. I can't remember, but I will have the link down below for you. But I did pay for that brush and I love it, love it, love it. I will have it down below for you though if you are interested in working on it. The next brush we're going to talk about is the chalk brush. So I have two different versions of this brush. This is the original version of the brush. So it just has kind of like a little bit of a texture to it right there. You can really see the color of it in there. And then I have a more modified version of this brush where I kind of just went in and tweaked it a little bit so it's not too grainy, as you can see here. So I'll make these the same size really quick just so you guys can see the difference because that's really high up. But as you can see, the two different brushes, this one has a lot more of holes in it, so it's a little bit more transparent than this brush, but there is still transparency within this brush. So I use this when I'm filling in different objects after I've outlined them, just to add a little bit of texture, and then I'll use this one if I feel like the image needs a little bit more transparency. To do that, you have to go into your brushes in here and just kind of mess around with all of these tools until you kind of figure out like what you like. It took me a really long time to figure it out. I turned the flow like all the way up because I just thought it looked a little bit nicer and it's a little bit easier to use, but I'm just gonna quickly go through all of these. So if you want to pause and like just see what I'm using, I don't really want to talk about it for too long, but it's a good brush. I highly recommend having both because then you'll have multiple options. I usually use both within all of my pieces just because it's a little bit easier to figure out and fine-tune images. So as for smoothing goes, I don't really use this a lot. Like I said before, I use a soft brush when I do use it, but I'm not a huge blending person, so I'm not really gonna get into that. Erasing, what I do personally is whatever brush I was using, I will erase whatever I'm doing with that brush. So if I'm using the Tara brush and I don't like something, to keep the texture of the erasing parts, I will use that brush just to get rid of it. Or if I don't want to do that, I can also go into airbrushing and use the hard brush. That's another option that I like to use as well. One other brush that I want to talk about really quick for those of you that are interested in sticker making, I go into my calligraphy and I click the monoline brush. This is like the perfect regular brush that you can use for outlining sticker pieces just to make sure that you get a super fine, super perfect line. I use this in all of my sticker making. You can see it in these ones that I made here. I use the monoline brush in white for the background. If you don't want a background piece, you can also use this underneath your image that you're using, so that way when it cuts it out, you won't have all these like little textury bits like in here when you're making a sticker, but I personally like the look of using a white background. So as for my process, we are going to use this little cat loaf that I've been working on lately and kind of talk to you about how I do my process. So first things first, what I usually do is I will find an image of something that I like. So for this case, I found a picture of a bread loaf that I really liked. So I will use that usually as a reference. Typically when I do that, I use Pinterest to look up the image, or Unsplash is also a really nice option. And then I will just drag Pinterest over here. I'm not gonna do that because I already have my image. But what I will do from there is I will quickly sketch it. So this is my rough sketch of the image. As you can see here, it's very messy, not very cute, but I took the image of the bread loaf and decided that this looked really good. I thought it was nice. I added little bits here that I thought would look nice, and then once I do that, what I go from there and do is I go into here and I turn the opacity down a lot. And then after that, I will sketch over that image. So as you can see here, I move some stuff around to make it a little bit more fine-tuned to where I like it. I usually use red because it stands out. You can use whatever color you like, but personally, I like to use red. And I do use the tar brush when I am doing that. And then when I'm done, you just turn this layer off and boom, you have like this really, really nice fine-tuned sketch that's not too messy, there's not lines everywhere, and it doesn't confuse you, because personally, I get really confused by my sketches, so I think it's nice to just have two options of your sketch to go off of. So from here, I usually go into the flat colors. It's important to have flat colors because it makes you understand more of a visualization of your piece later on. So I am going to just start off by making the inside a color. And I'm gonna go in here and go to my chalk brush. Now, this is where some people's opinions may differ, but this is what I personally do. I will go in here, add a layer on top of the old sketch. You can even delete the sketch if you don't want it, but I'm just keeping it for reference sake. A lot of people might go in here and line everything out here just to make sure it's perfect when they do it in. If you want to spend the extra time doing that, go right ahead. But personally, I don't do that. So what I'm gonna do, because I'm crazy, I usually just go in and start just going like this. It sounds weird, but it'll make sense later. And then after that, I do it the opposite way, just to fill in any gaps. And then I'll do it another way, just to add more texture. So if you see little gaps like this, I just lightly go over those to fill them in. But this just adds little bits, like right here, like I can just kind of like go over it. I want to keep little tiny holes, if that makes any sense, just to like keep the texture looking cute. And you can see now why you might want to go in here and like line it first and then measure it out. But I'm crazy and I don't do that usually. So I'm just gonna be real with you guys and sharing my process. So from here, what I normally do is I will go into here with the monoline brush to make sure it's perfect and precise. And I'll just go in and erase all of this. And it probably takes a lot longer than lining it, but you know, this is what I do. This is my process, and everybody's process is different. Sometimes I like to line it before if I'm feeling lazy, but drawing for me is like a form of therapy. It makes me content, it keeps me anxiety free, and I kind of like the process of erasing things, so I usually just keep it for that. But you don't have to. If you don't want to do that, if you would rather spend time outlining it first, then you can totally do that. But I like to keep a little bit of the traditional form, and I like to erase things because it just comforts me a little bit. Personally, I do deal with anxiety and I deal with panic attacks, so I like to do things that calm me down, and weirdly enough, erasing the outlines of an image calms me down. So it's the little things that matter, if that makes any sense to any of you guys out there. Some of you might get it. If you suffer from anxiety and depression, you might be just like me and you want to just outline the image, and maybe you don't. So once everything is erased, I like to just go in with a smaller version of the brush and just make sure I fill in everything that I need to be filled in. keep in a little bit of the texture, but not too much. So I'll just like lightly kind of swipe it on there like that. This doesn't need to be on here because I'm going to be doing a different color for the back piece. And there we go. So the front of the basic flat lay shade is done. So what we're gonna do from here is we're gonna go back down here and add another layer. And I usually do underneath whatever is like the most front of the image. And because this is the front of the loaf, I'm gonna make that the front part of the image. And to add dimension to this piece, what I like to do is take the original color and I'll just darken it a little bit and then add a little bit of saturation to it. And then pretty much do the exact same thing. I'll go in with my chalk, make sure it's up a little bit, and go over it. So that is the side of the image. And what I'm gonna do is just go in and erase like I did before. Okay, and then from here, what I'm gonna do is add another layer, and I'm going to take this color and just add a little bit more saturation to it. So what you do, instead of just touching this one, you're gonna touch this one and go a little bit more saturated, and then push it down just a little, and then over. And then add this onto the top layer. So there's my loaf. As you can see, there is different colors here that add a little bit of dimension. So the top of it might be more dark. The front of it will be a little bit lighter because that is the inside of the loaf, and then the side is kind of a mixture of both of them. So as for the paws go, what I usually do is I take one of the colors that I've already used, add a new layer, and then I will do the same thing and just kind of go over this. Things that I've learned just to keep things a little bit more simple within my piece, because before I kind of understood what I was doing, I would just kind of use whatever colors I felt like instead of like staying within a color palette and switching multiple things within that color palette to make it a little bit better. So I think that's important to do as well. I also want to add a little bit of pink onto the cheeks because that is a main layer. So I'm going to go in here, and then just make it a little bit lighter. And there's my cheeks on the drawing. So now, this is gonna look a little crazy, but what you're gonna do is you're gonna turn off your sketch layer, and it's gonna look something like this. And this looks absolutely crazy. This looks like nothing. But what I like to do now is go in on a new layer above these and kind of fine tune it with my Tara brush. So usually what I do is I go in with this and I just kind of smooth all these out, make it the right shape that it's supposed to be. I'll use the sketch layer as a reference, but I don't like having line art, a lot of it anyways, in my image. So things that I'll probably keep line art wise are these lines right here, pause, and then these right here with the two eyes on there. But other than that, I don't really keep a lot of line art. So now I have kind of like my basic layout. I have the shading where I want it around the paws, around here, just to kind of give the bread loaf a little bit more of kind of like, it makes it more like 2D-ish. So I put a little face on it. I didn't really like the mouth that I had before, so I just kind of put a little smug look on it because it's like one of my favorite looks ever, because it's how I feel like all the time. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in and kind of put lines where I want it. So I'm gonna take this color and just kind of make it a little bit darker, a little bit more unsaturated. And I can always change this later if I don't like it. I have a new layer here and I'm gonna go in with the Tara brush and just kind of add the lines where I want it to go. So for this, I want one here, and then I want another one here, just to kind of separate this side of the bread because it is different. And then I'm just gonna go in and kind of go over that. And then you can kind of tweak it if there's little bits that you don't like that. And that's pretty simple. It's just, it gives it a little bit more of a color, and I don't really like the color of it, so I'm gonna go in and kind of just mess with it a little bit until I actually like it. But now, another thing that I like to do is go in and just kind of see if there's any more places where I'd like line art. And go over, why is that? Oh, ha, it's still alpha locked. So we're gonna go over this. So I like that. And then this side as well. I feel like it just needs a little bit something to separate it out. You could add it to like the feet on the bottoms if you like, or around here if you want it to separate that, but little lines as possible is usually how I go with my pieces. Another thing I want to do is add a little bit of shapes to the front piece of the bread, because the front of bread is typically, there's usually texture to it. Like if you look at bread, because I have a little image over here, you can see that there's little holes like on the inside of bread. So I want to add a few of those to add just a little bit more of something to the front of the piece so it's not just too flat. So to keep this super simple, I already added the little dots where I want them to be, but I also want to add a few highlights. So what I'm going to do is go up in here, and instead of going to multiply, we're going to go start with screen and just add the highlights wherever I feel necessary. So I kind of just like do little wavy lines like that, add a little bit of texture. Just to add kind of more texture to the piece, and then you can lower the opacity just like a little bit right there, just so it's not too harsh, but it's enough where you can still see it on the image. Last thing I want to do with this image is I want to add a little bit of multiplying to the top layer up here. So we're going to go up into multiply and then add a little bit of darkness to the back of this image. And then I'm going to lower that down to about 28. So as you can see, a little bit of dimension goes a long way. And I think it looks really cute, just a little loaf cat. So now what I like to do after I've done all of this, just because I feel like this is a little bit dull, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in and select all of the layers that are currently on. And we're gonna group them together and flatten them. So now the loaf cat is one big image, and I'm gonna go into here and I'm just gonna up the saturation just like a little bit, and then up the brightness. And then I usually go back in and lower this just back down to about 51%. So it just adds a little bit. It's not too crazy or anything, but it's enough to be able to really see the image now. So this is the final image right here. So now what I like to do is go into the background and just kind of add little bits. You can add grids. So to do that easily, I just turn this on, turn on the drawing guide, and I'll turn on the 2D grid so I can see where I want to put like the background. And then there's also shapes. You can use shapes as well. So if I wanted to do like a yellow, I don't know, one of these. You see a lot of people do these guys. And then you just fill it in however you like, and that's a background too. It's really up to you. It's not, you don't want to copy other people. You want to do something that you like. And personally, I don't want to add too much to the background of this, so I'm probably just going to add like a few shapes to the background. do my little, I don't even know what it's called. I like to put my name on my images because I don't like people wanting to steal my stuff. So what I'm doing is I'm gonna click Alpha Lock onto my little logo, and then I'm gonna do fill layer, so whatever the background layer is, and then I'm gonna click multiply. So it kind of goes over the image and it also goes over the background, so it's a little bit harder for people to steal this image now. And yeah, that's usually how I do that. And then I kind of just move it to wherever I think it looks good, and I think it looks good right about there anyway, so we're gonna keep it there. But yeah, that's how I use my Procreate brushes. That's how I have like my whole design process, just kind of like a super simplified version. It's not exact, it's not perfect, but it's kind of a rough idea of how I do my sketches, and my sketches change over time, as they should, because this is art. Art changes, art kind of evolves over time, and it's important to continue to learn and grow and work on your art and make it better than it was before. So thank you for watching this video today. I hope you guys are doing well, and I will see you on Sunday for a studio vlog. So bye guys.